Hi, I'm Drew.
And I'm Sam.
And welcome to Drewling Samantics.
Hello, Sam. Hello, matey. I'm here.
There
Sorry
he
about that.
is.
Sorry.
How you doing, buddy?
I'm good, thank you. And I must say, I mean, you've had a haircut, haven't you?
I have.
Yes. You've trimmed the beard. I mean, that's either one or two reasons. You're either doing it for me, so thank you very much.
Well,
or of course, our wonderful Drewling Samantics fans, or it's just because you've been bloody hot and you've had your haircut.
let's pretend it's the former, but in reality, yeah. No, I had so much hair, mate, and it got so hot. I thought I just need to trim down that. It's enough's enough, and I'm in me bright. Look at this bright.
Look at
for summery months, and yeah.
If you could just see that, people. There's oranges going on. There's yellows and very summery, mate. Very summery. I'm just wearing a white t-shirt because hey. Why not?
Why not? But have you got something to cool down with?
Oh, I have indeed. Yeah, I'm on the orange juice again.
Oh, well. And I'm sticking with water. But I tell you what, I think we should have a beer next week.
Oh, definitely next week. Cheers, people.
Cheers, everyone. Yeah. So how have you been? What have you been up to? How's the week?
The week's been good. Past couple of days I've had a little bit of a rest because it's been so bloody hot. But the previous days we had the events at the London Business School for their. I realised what it was is they had delayed because of the unwelcome guest. They delayed the graduation days, so there were six graduation sessions. Okay. So there was one in the morning, one in the evening, one in the afternoon for 2020, 2021. And obviously people that have graduated this year. So at each event, there were 1,000, 1,100 people in the morning, then the same in the afternoon or late afternoon, early evening. And with some, there were lots and lots of children. And with others, there were fewer kids. But so we were there. We had one set of activities outside and we had one set of activities indoors with the children, We were sort of like, just in case it rains, which was obviously never going to be the case. No. But they were great fun to do. They're lovely people because there are people from all over the world go to the London Business School. It's one of the biggest and best business economic schools in the country, or in Europe, I think. So it was a nice experience. It was obviously we were battling with it being outside. We were very exposed and very hot. Yeah. But hey, otherwise, those are busy 2 or 3 days, but otherwise quite quiet this week. Has given me a time to sort of just sit and look at some scripts that I've got coming up and before we start rehearsals in September. So I've been able to have a good old read and that. But how about yourself? You've been dodging the heat and
very similar really. So no big events per se over the past week or so, but I've got a show coming up with a brand new script. I've got an exciting film on the horizon, which has got a big script to go through. Just more prep. And as you say, just trying to kind of deal with the heat. Don't get me wrong, everyone has been. But it's been tough. I mean, we are a country that notoriously doesn't do well with extremes, be that cold and snow or hot, dry. So we're very good at in the middle, mediocre kind of. Yeah, we can cope with that. It's a bit overcast and it's not very warm, but it's not unbearable to the point your fingers are falling off, or vice versa. We're having a nice warm summer in the early 20s. We can deal with that. Oh, cool, isn't it warm? But yes, it's nice. Hit the other extremes and we're bollocks, aren't we? Basically, the country comes to a stop.
It's interesting because I was listening to sort of people remarking on, that there have been sort of grass fires and that sort of thing. And people say, we're just not prepared. And it's like, when was the last time we saw temperatures like this? Yeah. How on earth in a temperate country are we going to be prepared for 40-degree temperatures? You know, we're not. So it's no wonder we're not ready for it, because we were never really expecting it. Yes, we were expecting it this time round. You know, we were warned, you know, 4 or 5 days ago, it's going to be that hot. And you go, okay, so in 4 or 5 days, the whole infrastructure of the country can change, can it? No, we're just going to kind of have to accept the fact that we're going to be a bit stretched for, you know, 3-4 days. It's going to be uncomfortable. I think now we know, you know, now we know that this is probably going to be a regular occurrence because of climate change, global warming, call it what you will. Now we can be prepared. It's like we're more prepared for severe winters. So we're going to be prepared for the extremes of summer. It's like, otherwise, like you say, we've always been a bit sort of like, oh, it's all right. It's not going to get too hot. It's not going to get too cold. Well, now it is.
Yeah. Now we got both. Bugger it. But,
braced ourselves. Yeah.
No, we do have to sort of deal with things and overcome them, don't we? And it's, I guess there's so much else going on that it just feels like everything's ramping up, and there's issues with the government, and then obviously we're still sort of post lockdowns, and the unwelcome guest is still very
much in evidence,
very much around. But I mean, this podcast, we've said a few times before, and actually it has to be flagged up. This is our last Us episode of this season, of season 5, which is, I mean, number one, where's the time gone? Absolute madness. Obviously, we've got a couple more episodes in this season, but they're our best of, so they're sort of highlight reels, so to speak. But yeah, this is the last time in this season. 73 odd episodes. This is our 13th episode of this season, something like that.
Something like that, mate.
It's crazy. It is absolute madness to think that essentially what was a method for you and I to beat the boredom, to kind of help our mental health, a way of chatting, having a bit of a laugh, making up for the fact we couldn't sort of go out for a beer, has turned into this. Essentially, what was a coping mechanism has become such a massive part of our lives. But I think what that says is it was hugely successful. And I don't mean that in an arrogant sense, in like, oh, we're amazing, look what we've done. But what we set out to do, we did so well that we're still doing it now, despite it not being for its original purpose, if that makes sense.
I totally agree. I mean, the thing is, it is also become, we're talking to the great guests that we've had on. It's learning how they've coped and overcome things, and then going forward, how, I mean, so all our guests are from the industry in some way, shape, or form, and how they've overcome that period of time. But also, it is going forward. We've also had lovely stories of people who've overcome other things, not apart from the unwelcome guest.
Yeah.
Which it's a great. That's like. Yeah, we've season 5. There isn't the great reason now to go on, but actually the reason for carrying on and the reason it is being so successful is, we're learning now. It's become a learning tool and also just a great social tool and apparatus and a great way for you and I to because we don't get to see each other as often as we want. We're still working together, but also all those friends that have popped on that it's a couple of people I haven't seen for a couple of years, and you go, great, you're still working. It's been a little bit of networking and stuff. All those things, although they're all coping mechanisms, but they're all sort of, listening to other people overcoming ridiculous things. Yeah. I mean, just problems that you get that, obviously everybody in everyday life, but sometimes in a performance or a theatrical situation or work situation, they're magnified a little bit. Do you know what I mean? Because you've got to deal with it pretty much there and then. I mean, if you're on stage and your trousers fall down, you've got to pull them up and get out. Do you know what I mean? There is that kind of.
Unless you're in the full Monty, as I was, in which case your trousers are supposed to come down at some point. So you don't need to overcome that one in quite the same way. But no, I agree that there are so many, and I mean, you must have your career far outweighs mine for time alone at this stage. You must have some incredible stories of random things you've had to overcome in.
Well, I mean, case in point, when we were doing One Man, Two Governors, and it was the first outdoor show I've done in a long time. I haven't done anything outdoors for quite a few years. Quite a few of us were saying, but there was a couple. I mean, quite apart from the fact that we were performing on Saturday matinee, I think I said before, 29 degrees on stage, which is bloody hot when you're wearing a thick suit. But there was the heat, and that also, I mean, the audience were sitting there, and they brought water with them and umbrellas to keep the sun off, ironically, in an English summer. But the other thing we had to cope with was there was some food used in the show.
Yeah.
There was some of it was fake, but some of it had to be real because the character of Francis, the man with two governors, has to eat it, has to physically eat it on stage. So it's got to be real. It's got to be. It doesn't have to be chicken balls. It actually, in this instance, it was gnocchi that he ate. But but the thing was, we had to keep it covered, and one person had to be backstage all the time near the table because the seagulls were just dive bombing the table.
No way.
And the stage manager at Brighton Open Air Theatre said, "Oh, we notice you're using real food and drink. They will land on the table and drink out of glasses as well. If you've got things in glasses, they will drink out the glasses." So she said, if you do see seagulls, discourage them. She said, we always play the sound of, I think it's a peregrine falcon. They play that over the loudspeakers for 10 minutes before they open the theatre up to get rid of the seagulls. They actually play the sound of a bird to get rid of the seagulls. But she said, if you can discourage them, if you see one, just wave at it, chase it away. So we were backstage, and at one point we had a tablecloth over the top to keep the sun off and to keep the seagulls. So you pull the tablecloth back and take the prop out, put the tablecloth back over. Yeah. And if you left the tablecloth seriously for longer than 30 seconds, a seagull would appear. And at the back of the stage, the configuration at the back of the stage boat is there are like a cyclorama of concrete with a couple of gaps in, so you could make entrances. So that was our backstage area. So someone at some point would be there, and you'd look up and you'd see a seagull sitting on top of the concrete cyclorama. You'd be waving a tea towel, bugger off. They take a bit of dissuading, I tell you.
They're so big.
They are big.
Until you get close to one, you don't bloody realise. I know. Stuff all these birds of prey and stuff. It's the seagulls that I'm more terrified of.
But I mean, they were saying they did a show and two characters were sitting on stage eating sandwiches, and the seagulls were dive bombing and pulling the sandwiches out of their fingers on stage. So he said, the audience and the actors is like, nothing we can do. We're just going to have to let them eat everything on stage, and then we'll carry on. Wow. That was in a previous production. I don't know what production it was. So yeah, we had to cope with dive bombing seagulls.
I mean, we had an episode, I think it must have been back in either season 1 or season 2, where we talked about never working with kids or animals. I mean, that one probably doesn't quite fit under there because you weren't working with them. They decided to involve themselves. But
absolutely, yeah.
Mad. There are so many different little tidbits that you think back about. I mean, as we said, and we won't dwell on it too much because we are moving forward, and the podcast started because we were in lockdown, and both of us had pantomimes and other productions affected by the unwelcome guest. I mean, I was in Panto in East Grinstead, and we at the beautiful Checkermead Theatre, give them a bit of a shout out. And we had our leading lady. I mean, fortunately, in the end, it transpired she didn't. She wasn't positive, but she had one of those notifications saying you've been near someone, please get tested, and blah blah blah. And because of that, she had to step away from the show for a few days. Now, we didn't have understudies, so it was a bit like, oh God, what do we do? Now, fortunately or unfortunately, however you look at it, when she got this notification, it was on one of our 2 days off. We had a very small break where we had 2 days in a row with no shows. So she notified the production team on day off number one. Sorry, I'm out for at least, I think, was it a period of 5 days at that point you had to?
I think it was 5 days, yeah.
You had your PCR, and then if that was negative, you were fine. So she said, but I won't be back until at least 3-4 days. So the following day, so they spent the rest of that day where she'd notified them, contacting people they knew, saying, what are you doing at the moment? Are you free for the next 5 days? Blah, blah, blah. Could you learn this? Fortunately, found someone, and she stepped in. And the other day off we had, she went into the theatre with the producer and the director, and I believe possibly the choreographer was in as well. And they took her through the entire show, and she learned the entire show essentially in a day.
Wow.
And then went out, and I think she must have done 6, maybe 8 performances. Yeah, amazing to be able to step in and do that at such short notice. If you're listening, Sarah, thank you. You saved us. Well done. Brilliant job. But yeah, so that's another incident, obviously, of overcoming, and in particular that was the unwelcome guest. I believe you said when we chatted about it, was it your ASM went down with
we were lucky, but our producer had 7 shows on. We only lost our ASM for the last 2 days of the run. Otherwise, all our cast and crew were okay. But we were extremely disciplined. I mean, nobody went to the pub after the show. Every single person went home and stayed out of the way. Other productions for the production company weren't so lucky. The production company had what they called the subs bench. So they had a couple of dames on it, a couple of comedians, villains that would go. I mean, at one point, they got so short because even they were getting COVID. Yeah. So even the subs couldn't go on. At one point, the producer was driving his wife down to a show because she was going on as villain. And the stage manager said, oh, by the way, you'll be going on as well this morning. To the producer, because the comic's down. You wrote the show, you must know it. You'll be on in half an hour. God. So it was an extraordinary time, But I mean, we earlier this year doing Fighting Irish. I mean, we only had the entire company in the rehearsal room for 2 days because COVID knocked us sideways and various things went on. So, but the show goes on. I mean, it does. You talk about this is nothing to do with the unwelcome guest, but doing Panto years ago, I think I told you, this is 2 stories in one, in a way. I fell off the stage
yes,
at a get-in in New Brighton.
Yeah, we did an episode, didn't we, that somehow it was all about injuries or things going wrong.
Was, yeah.
I broke my nose doing a backflip in rehearsals, and you fell off the stage. So our long-time listeners and viewers will probably remember. If that doesn't ring any bells, go back and have a listen. Season 1, season 2, something I can't remember. Yeah. Go back and listen to all of them. You'll enjoy them. They're great.
Yes, anyway, listen to a whole lot. An awful lot has happened to us.
Yeah.
But falling off the stage at New Brighton, it seems to be a bit of a thing because many years before I fell off the stage at New Brighton, I was working for a pantomime company, and we'd finished our run. And the director said to me, Drew, would you mind driving up to New Brighton, stopping off on the way to pick up a dwarf? Now, I use that word advisedly because it was a dwarf in Snow White. It was a small person playing one of the 7 dwarves. So he said, would you mind picking up a little person, taking them up to New Brighton, because one of the guys playing one of the 7 dwarves has fallen off stage. And I went, what have you been doing for the past couple of shows? He said, don't worry, they've been improvising. They've been doing things like, now...
How do you improvise? The title of the show is Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs. And you're telling me they were 1 dwarf down?
Yeah. Well, what they did was, which is really clever, they left 1 dwarf off stage. They renamed themselves, and the 1 dwarf off stage was bashful or shy or whatever he was. Yeah. He was too shy to come on. So they go, right, you 6, you come with me, you stay there. So So he never appeared. So
That's so
for
simple,
2 or 3 days.
But
Yeah,
brilliant.
but it was
brilliant.
stunning. And then I drove this poor guy. He'd just finished his show, his last show. There was no after show party for him. I picked him up, God knows, somewhere up north, and then continued up north to New Brighton because it's a bloody long way up.
Yeah.
That was in the night, driving up in the night, dropped him off. He had a few hours sleep. I had a few hours sleep and drove back down because I'd finished my panto. That poor devil then jumped into a panto that he didn't know the role. He had to learn, and he was on in the afternoon. So, but yeah. So falling off the stage in New Brighton, it happens, you know, in 2 episodes.
I mean, the only thing that would make that better is if he'd gone, God, what do I do? I'm short, excuse the pun, short a dwarf. Drew!
Well, I honestly thought that was what he was going to say to me. But, you know, who's the shortest member of my production team?
Yeah.
Drew, you know.
We've got a new dwarf going on called Lanky. Drew,
the only time I'm ever going to be... Only time I'm ever going to be called Lanky, mate.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. I mean, and there are... I mean, we talk about injuries and obviously the unwelcome guests affecting lots of people, but illness actually outside of a global pandemic, which is highly viral and everyone will get in some way or form at some point, probably. Yeah. When you're working as a tight-knit cast, the chances of getting ill are already massively increased. I mean, I've talked before about production of Rock of Ages I did many years ago. Amazing production. But our cast were hit. We had some serious sort of flu bug, sort of colds and stuff, to the extent that people were dropping during rehearsals and we were getting closer and closer to opening the show. And then, wonderfully, our 2 leads, so the 2 main I say the 2 leads, there were quite a few leads the way the story works, but our hero and heroine, so to speak, both got very, very ill. In fact, I think one of them had laryngitis in the end that developed from having this cold or whatever a couple of days before we went up. And anyone that knows the show quite well knows that the leading man and lady have some very, very demanding vocals, like some incredible big songs, vocals. Very high, very powerful. And there was no way that they were going to recover in time for the opening. So, I mean, I say we're talking about overcoming stuff. We actually, did we overcome it? It's probably not the right word for it. In the end, we closed the previews. We didn't do, I think we had 2 preview shows. We pulled them and just said, we're very sorry to any sort of like the invited audience or the reviewers or whatever producers from other stuff that were coming in to see. Very sorry, investors and stuff, but we literally haven't got a cast. We didn't have the facility to bring in people. I mean, it was miraculous that we managed to bring someone in for that panto, but we had a day, we had nothing. And with panto, there is a format that everyone knows to an extent if you've done panto before. So yes, you have to learn the specifics, but you can kind of muddle your way through it to an extent. Not taking that away from Sarah, who stepped in for hours, or anyone else that has done that. But as you said, you had a subs bench, or your producer had a subs bench, because a villain can adapt to being a villain in pretty much any panto. This was a full-blown musical. If you didn't know the show and the songs already, there's no way you could step in and do it in a day or whatever, which we didn't even have. So we pulled the previews. Miraculously, we managed to open when we planned to, with regards to normal shows. The recovery time for them was phenomenal. They had some amazing treatment and blah blah blah. But yeah, but illness in a cast when you're doing a production. I mean, we talked about panto. Panto Lurgy happens every year. Oh,
yeah.
Unwelcome guest aside, you're doing between 20 and 40 on average days of work. And those days very rarely will be less than 2 and quite often are 3 show days. So the amount of work and effort you're putting in it drains you, so that makes you more susceptible to picking something up. I mean, most of the time you're working with kids, and as we know, kids carry all sorts of germs and horribleness.
Incubate nastiness.
Yeah.
And also,
Yeah,
it's the time of year. It's the time of year. It's cold. It's winter.
Oh, yeah.
You know, flu bugs and everything is around. So, you know.
Yeah, there's things like that you do have to overcome. But I mean, injuries and illness aside, there's also all sorts of other unpredictable scenarios that you just have to jump through.
I mean,
we've both worked at a venue, and I'm not going to name it because it's unfair, but doing this one jumped up when even just mentioning the word overcome, this jumped straight into my mind. You and I have both done, not together, but both performed immersive shows in a particular venue slightly further up the country, where, shall we say, the sight lines are not ideal. Do you know what I'm referring to?
I think I know where you're referring to. Yeah.
So essentially, to give a very brief overview, when we're doing one of these immersive shows, you've got lots of people sat around eating a meal, and we're mingling, wandering between them, performing scenes, performing famous bits from shows and whatever else. Now, obviously, we have to make that as best possible something that everyone can see and everyone can get involved in, and everyone knows what's going on. There is a particular venue that we've both done that is, I mean, you could sort of describe it almost the shape of a letter J, I think. You know what I mean?
That would be, yes.
Upside down J, where it goes all the way down and then doubles back on itself. And there's sort of a wall with smallish windows. And bless them, the people at the venue are lovely. But we do, every time we've done that venue, we say to them, look, people are going to want to see. So maybe just keep them in a bit where they can see. But inevitably, they always overbook or sell capacity. So they stick people in the curve of the J, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
So to overcome that, we just have to be quite mobile and run around a bit. And just beforehand, you work out positions and go, right, it's not ideal for those people in there, so let's give them a bit more time where we're over here. We'll stand here. Right, Drew, you go stand over there. Right, I can see you from here. Blah, blah, blah. Can you see Drew from there? No. Right, adjust that. No. And it just, it's a nightmare. But touch wood, we've always managed to overcome it. So
it's interesting, isn't it? Because as well, sometimes the audience will go, no, no, we're not having this. And they give you a difficult time. But if you keep on playing, I think audiences appreciate the fact that you are making an effort to make a situation that isn't great work.
Yeah.
I mean, I did a 40 Towers wedding one day, and I don't think I've ever told you this. We were in a space, and that there was all the guests were downstairs. And the bride and bridegroom and the top table were kind of on a level. It was like a minstrel's gallery. They were up looking down at their guests,
right?
Which was slightly odd. It looked great, and they'd managed to make it kind of, it was like a barn. And if you haven't got this raised area, you wouldn't have enough to get the number of guests in.
Okay.
And it was there, and they'd used it, and there was one tiny narrow little staircase up to this thing that the poor bride in all her dress trying to get up there was actually hysterical, but nobody laughed. I left the room because it was just so funny. I was like, no, I got to get out of this place. But once she was up there, the poor cow couldn't get back down. She spent the entire day up.
This is where you live now.
Yeah, and we were running up and down, and they said to me, would you mind taking up and serving the top table? And I went, what, up this tiny little staircase? They went, yeah. And I went, okay. But if I drop anything, it's your fault for asking. And admittedly, they didn't have many. They had the bride and the groom, the two sets of parents, the matron of honor, or maid of honor, and the best man. So 8 people up there. So it wasn't a huge table. And I managed to sort of get meals, and I was making a joke and pass it along and blah, blah, blah. That's not yours. That's for the bride,
Yeah.
But the thing was, we had to also perform an hour and a half, 2 hours of a Fawlty Towers wedding show.
Yeah.
With the bride and groom up there and the guests down there and running. I mean, it was hysterical. It wasn't, I've completely forgot about that. You were talking about odd shaped rooms. It worked. And most of the guests were kind of like, oh, this is real Faulty Towers, isn't it? You know, who organised this sort of thing?
Yeah.
So, it was one of those moments you think, yeah, we managed to get over that. We pulled that one off. But hysterical. Yeah.
Did you have any prep time on that? Or was it very much turn up and, oh, my God, this is the situ?
No, we arrived we always give ourselves a good 2 hours to get in. Sometimes we have to set up sound. Sometimes we just, and on this occasion, we didn't have to set anything up apart from, our set pieces. But we are a surprise. So very often, and we were on this occasion, you couldn't get in the space for more than 5 minutes. So we literally went in there and went, oh my God, what are we going to do? And then we came out and thought about it. And then you go back in and then you're presented with things that you didn't know, like Manuel's going to serve the top table. Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Oh,
great.
Christ. And then we want you to go up. And now the guy that plays Basil, 6'7", getting up those little stairs for him was just, I mean, he could almost stand down on the floor and talk to them anyway, without he was. Yeah. But it was one of those moments you think, how the hell are we going to get over this? But yeah, you do. I mean, on another occasion, forgive me, totally different. I was doing a show. We used to do a set of shows called the Ha Ha shows. And for some unknown reason, and no, we never found out whose fault it was, but our costumes were left behind at a previous venue. So we arrived and we were doing one-nighters. So we arrived at a venue and the costume skip and whatnot wasn't there. So 4 of us had to get the producer. We rang the producer. We haven't got any costumes. And I was playing a female character as well as a couple of male characters. So we went, well, what we'll try to do is go out and get 3 suits for the main characters that are kind of nondescript.
Yeah.
A dress for me. The MD was 6'4" and built like a brick outhouse. So we don't anything we can get for him. Yeah. So we just had to go out to charity shops and buy what we could. And we only had about an hour and a half before they shut.
Wow.
We did it. And the next day, we had the costumes picked up by a courier. Went and picked them up. And had to drive them where they were, but yeah, it's like, who did that? No one knows.
Yeah, no one will ever admit to that. But
it was just one of, and we did it so much and we never said to the audience, look, we know the costumes look naff, but they're in York, which is where they were left, and we're in, Northampton or something. Nothing we can do. No. But it was one of those moments. You just keep going, going. Don't let on, just keep going.
Now this obviously isn't a pissing contest, but I would like to finish by slightly one-upping the one you've just mentioned.
Oh, go.
Because you've literally reminded me of it now. If this doesn't sum up overcoming, then I don't know what does. But I was involved in a similar situation to yours, where so again it was an immersive show, and if we're doing an immersive show at, let's say, 7:30 in the evening, we'll normally turn up about 5 o'clock, so we've got time to prep everything, check for any changes, organize things, get ready, costumes ready, run through scripts, have a bite to eat, and away we go. So I showed up for this show, and it was a Saturday evening. So turned up around about 5 o'clock and set a few things up, and then the young lady, who shall remain nameless, but if she's listening, she'll know it's her, turned up with the props. Now, we do a multitude of different shows within this particular company, and each one has a different set of props and costumes. And at times you may find yourself hosting multiple costumes. You know where this is going, and I can see the grin on your face.
I think I know what you're going to say.
So we were doing, let's call it show A, and this young lady had turned up with the costumes for show B. So by now it's about 5:30. So charity shops all closed. We haven't even got time to go out to them anyway. Tried to look up and see if there were any costume shops nearby. Nearest one about 20 miles away. We were in the arse end of nowhere, as of course you were, because you're never somewhere convenient when you need something easy to happen. So it's bad enough you haven't got the right costumes, but to put it into context a little bit more, the show we were doing, which we couldn't change because these people were booked to see this specific show, they wouldn't want to see something different. That particular show involved a Roman gladiator, a policewoman, a holiday camp entertainer, shall we say? What else was in it?
There is, if it's the one I'm thinking of, is a very specific suit as well.
There is a very bright, colourful outfit involved as well. All of which are in the correct costume set. Were they in the other one? No. So we had to come up with things. So I can't remember all the specifics, but what I do remember is that one of the people involved was our friend Tony Rudd, who was on the show a couple of months ago. And he happened to have in his car some of his props that he uses for one of his impersonation, his shows, his stand-up shows. So to create our gladiator, we borrowed a huge, what can only be described as some sort of turkey baster, like it looked like a sword thing, from the kitchen. Tony had a pair of dustbin lids, which he uses as Prince Charles's ears, in the back of his car. So we used one of those. We got a towel and wrapped it around one of the other performers' waist as sort of like a Roman skirt thing. He went topless, and I can't remember what we put on his head, but something as a helmet. But essentially, that was our Roman gladiator. It was awful, but actually it looked brilliant. Brilliant. It was so ridiculous that it worked. And yeah, for me, that's probably, when you talk about overcoming a situation within the business, I think that's just...
Mate, that just sounds like an episode of the A-Team. That was brilliant.
Oh, yeah. We'll call it the B team because we certainly...
Okay.
But yeah, so there we go. A lovely look back over some weird and wonderful overcoming episodes, for want of a better word. But so appropriate because, as said, we are on our final episode of this season 5 of a podcast, which was created to overcome boredom, lockdown, loneliness,
frustration, fear.
Yeah. So, and I guess in that sense, we should do what we always do at the end of a Drewling Samantics season, but even more so at this point, and just say such a huge thank you to everyone who has listened, watched, commented, shared, liked, streamed, downloaded, whatever you have done to help us out. And of course, to all our guests as well who have come on and been part of this. I think it's safe to say, Drew, that you and I have a great time doing this. We really, really do enjoy it. But it wouldn't be what it was without our guests and, of course, all our fans, followers, listeners, viewers. So an enormous thank you to every single person that has been involved.
Very, very humbling, and we're very grateful that people do listen and enjoy.
It means the world to us that people are still tuning in, albeit 70 episodes down the road, a year and a half in, and we promise that this is not the end. We are going to keep going. We've got some big plans for season 6. Some changes, some other things. If there's anything you want to see in particular, or you particularly liked from previous seasons or whatever, let us know, and we'll try and involve that a bit more as well. But for now, here's a cheers to season 5. Cheers to you, Drew. Cheers to everyone listening and watching.
Cheers, Sam. Cheers, everyone.
You do tune in next week and the week after, because we've got our best of episodes, which are always great fun.
Always good fun.
Really entertaining. So looking forward to those. But then we'll see you in a few weeks' time for a brand new season 6 of Drewling Samantics. I personally can't wait. Don't know about you, Drew.
No, I'm loving it. Loving it, mate.
Yeah, it's going to be a cracker. So thanks, everyone. We'll see you very soon.
Cheers, everyone.
Drew,
take
care. See you next week, mate. Take it easy.
See you, Sam.
Cheers. Thanks again for tuning in. We hope you've enjoyed watching this episode of Drewling Samantics.
If you have, then please consider subscribing to our channel and you'll get notified every time a new video is released. Don't forget, we're also available as audio only. Just search Drewling Samantics in any good podcast app.
Please support us on other social media too. We're on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, and all our links and handles are on screen now.
We love welcoming new followers and subscribers, so please share with your family and friends, and we'll be eternally grateful. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.